the spirit of this thing that is grabbing hold of people is not something, I don't know how to combat it. I found that when somebody really it's caught hold of somebody, it's almost impossible to kind of pull them away, or even to say anything that they'll, yeah, it's kind of like I talked about, it's like, somebody who, they are addicted to sugar, and you present them with an apple. It's just hard for them to find it appealing. So here are the principles, and this seems like really important. Like, I wanted to share it because I thought, wow, it just came into my mind. I thought, wow, that's helpful. And the thought was like, so there's something that what I found, and it's at the core of what this movie was about. It is the spirit of accusation, and the spirit of accusation is really interesting. So there is a reason to accuse somebody. It's to keep people safe. So if you've got an axe murderer in the neighborhood, you want to know who he is. You want him to be brought to justice so that he can't kill anybody else. So there's really is a help, and there is a duty even sometimes of members of the community to say, for example, hear an accusation. Those and particularly those that need to hear are those that would be serving on the jury of the person who's being accused of murder. They would need to hear that evidence, make a ruling so that they can take care of a person who may have committed a murder and keep him from causing further harm and damage to the community. Outside of that, it's often not very helpful to hear stories. Once a person's already been, accused of, being a serial killer and has been put in jail for life or died in the electric chair, there are people who love to read those stories, but it's kind of an idle fancy, and it's oftentimes it's a dark one. And I got thinking, that just occurred to me just out of the blue. I was like, oh yeah. That's why I don't really want to partake in it, is that, especially in something that's past, if it's a matter of keeping my community safe, well, that might be something different. But things that come up afterwards are kind of an idle fancy. Now, there's those who are compelled by it would say, well, no, it's not. But I get the sense that the reason why people would say that it's not is because of a kind of wrong belief, and the belief that appears to me to be wrong is the idea that I can judge a person's works and the things that they do based upon whether I can accuse them of some particular crime. And what we end up discovering, just based upon the basic principles of reason and logic, is that doesn't really hold water. Because a person who has done a wrong thing can still say a true thing, can still do something that may be helpful to people, to the community. But there's this idea that if I can somehow accuse them, that now I've proven everything that they've ever said to be wrong, and that we can see right away that isn't necessarily true. Charles Manson, I may be getting the name wrong, but a serial killer, I think it was Charles Manson, we may find out that he said several things, that were true during his life. And you would have to go through every single one of the things he said and find out if it was true. He may have also volunteered at the local soup counter and given out soup. He may have, in his less dark moments, been trying to do many good things of good report. We would have to go through and weed out what was good and what was bad. We would actually have to taste the fruits to know if the fruits were evil. And I find this interesting because, of course, the premise, the reason why people, the people you're about to talk to and the people who are involved with all of this, why they say it's so important that you need to partake in this spirit of accusation and watch this movie and find out for yourself if you really think that Brigham Young did this, is an underlying premise. And it's at the core of Mormonism since the death of Joseph Smith. Because many people, they are looking at Mormonism since, and they see things that they don't like, and what they want to do is they want to be able to say, well, this is justification for why there's bad fruit. It's all because Brigham Young was a dirty, rotten, filthy murderer, and therefore we can prove that all these other things are false. But it just struck me, and I wanted to share that with you, that is absolutely not necessarily the case. Every single tenet of Mormonism, every single tenet of the structure of the church and the way that it functions would have to be looked at individually. And of course, if you were to sit down in a logical room, if people weren't completely taken by this spirit, and you'd have to say, all right, well, let's go through the things one by one. Well, what does the church do that you don't like? Okay, well, and then you'd have to go through and say, well, did that come specifically from Brigham Young? And maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But even if it did, that would not prove, and say that you'd now prove that Brigham Young murdered Joseph Smith. It's like, or John Taylor or the other men that were in the cell with him that day. It's like, supposing that you could prove those things, that still would not prove that it was wrong. It might be wrong. Some of the tenets, for example, we've talked about things that we don't really like about the way the Mormon church runs now. It's like, yeah, but that is an independent aspect. It's a fruit that we've tasted and said, this fruit's kind of bitter, And so I when I thought about that, I wanted to share it because it seems kind of really important. It's like, because the compelling thing, the reason why people want you to watch the movies like that, the reason they want you to read the anti-Mormon pamphlet, the reason they want you to read this thing that's out of the spirit of accusation, is because they believe that if they can discredit the person, that they can discredit the movement, they can discredit the doctrine, they can discredit, but that doesn't add up. And it never has. We might be able to prove one day, they've tried to prove that Benjamin Franklin slept around. Right, maybe he did, but that doesn't prove that the work that he was involved with was not of God and good. And so then you have to ask yourself, this is the last thing, you have to ask yourself, just on the whole, do I want to participate in the spirit of accusation? It's like, do I want to participate in all of these juries that are going on for things that happened years ago to try to prove, do I want that fruit in my life? And it's like, and that what people will say is that, no, you need to, because it proves something or disproves something. But one of the comebacks, I think, one of the important aspects, because I've been involved with these juries like this for other things, people saying you need to participate in this. And one of the big comebacks and the important things that comes out of my heart is, it's like, I don't want to participate in, because it's very compelling, because they say, like, well, you don't really know because you won't watch the movie. And if you would watch the movie, then we could talk. Darn it, I thought I could fit it in 10. I'll do one more short recording. So yeah, I can't quite get my last comment wrapped together, but I think you get the point, is that there is a spirit of accusation. There's a good scripture in Revelation that says that Satan was thrown down, locked in the pit or whatever, and it says that they rejoiced, the angels rejoiced or something like that, the saints rejoiced, because he who did accuse the brethren, the accuser of the brethren, was put down, who accused them both day and night before the throne of God. And the reason why I don't want to watch the movie, and the people who want you to watch it, they'll say, well, you don't know the truth if you don't watch the accusations. And the reason I don't want to do it is that is that I don't want to partake of the bitter fruit of the spirit of accusation. Because now, if you can talk about principles, you can say, well, Brigham Young taught this, and I don't agree with it. Then I can agree or disagree with it. Okay, yeah, I think I agree. Or I agree in this way but disagree in the other. But to just accuse a person and thereby try to prove something by it, well, that's just the spirit of accusation. One last thing I'll share. So Joseph Smith was also accused of murder. There was I think a trial held whereby they were trying to prove that Joseph Smith sent, who was the avenging angel of Mormonism? It's right there. Rockwell. Who was the guy? Grew his hair long. Porter Rockwell. It was said that Joseph sent Porter Rockwell to. There was an assassination attempt upon Governor Boggs, and it was said that Joseph Smith sent Porter Rockwell to kill Governor Boggs. Now, here's the thing: is that there was some pretty good evidence about that, and I could dig into that, and I could prove that Joseph did or he didn't. I don't know. Maybe I could do it, but But the interesting thing is, Joseph was plagued with that spirit his entire life, the spirit of accusation. He was in and out of trials his entire life. And here's the funny thing, is it doesn't prove a damn thing about anything he wrote or anything he said. You have to read it for yourself. And you're about to have this meeting. I just find it interesting. You're about to have this meeting, and they're going to try to prove by proving this conspiracy. What really is trying to be proved is that the work of Brigham was right or wrong. Well, they're going to probably prove that it's wrong. And so that was what I wanted to share with you, is that it's interesting to me because it doesn't really prove a thing. Now, if they want to take out each of the discourses of Brigham and look at everything that he said and say, well, I think this about this and I think this about that, well, then they might have something. But it doesn't say anything about Mormonism, and it doesn't say anything about what Brigham said. That's what I wanted to share. Anyways, I love you, brother. Good luck with your meeting. God bless. Bye-bye.